guys, welcome to Jane's Corner. I hope you're all doing well. Today's topic is a bit more serious. I'll be talking about how carrying shame can keep us stuck. You know, shame is a silent battle that I feel that we all struggle with, and we sometimes avoid facing it. And I was this person for a very long time, and I just thought to discuss this and to share my perspective because I really think that it's something that really holds us back and can have a negative effect on us if we don't choose to deal with it. Before I get into it, I just want to urge you guys for the duration of this video, if you can please bear with me. Let's be real and honest with ourselves. You know, for us to truly heal and fix those issues within ourselves, we need to face the things we're not proud of, and we need to put our defenses down and just be vulnerable. Yeah, so I'm gonna be looking down because I have some of my notes here. I tried to find like the best definition of shame, and I looked, and most of them are similar, but the main concept of it is that it's a regrettable feeling that is a result of humiliation or distress, and that is caused by a wrongful or foolish behavior. So I think the key word here is regrettable, right? So we all have regrettable things in our life that we wish we had done differently, whether it's from past mistakes, things that we did that we are not particularly proud of. It can be from sin, what we wish we had handled differently, sorry. It could even be a lack of accomplishment. You know, sometimes we carry shame thinking, you know what, I should have been at a certain place by now in my life and I'm not yet there. You know, that type of shame is also something that's very real. And it could even be things that we didn't do. You know, sometimes we carry shame like, oh, I wish I had treated that person better or differently. But then also it's about things that have been done to us. You know, people carry shame from, you know, victims of abuse, sexual, physical, emotional abuse. Sometimes, you know, the victims of those situations carry shame with them throughout their lives. And that's why I'm saying it's something that we really need to talk about, because I feel that it's something very silent. It's a silent battle, and there's just something so sad about living in a way that is, you know, you just it holds you back, and it makes your life feel so heavy. And I'm talking from experience, because there's nothing worse than living your life in a way where you're like, if only I could have done that, I wish I could go back. You know, we can't turn back the hands of time, but we can try and heal and find ways to reconcile ourselves. So I'm gonna start with talking about why it's important for us to face our shame. And I know it's not a comfortable thing. We don't want to go into those places that are painful, but it's important that we do. You know, the reason why I realized that when I was avoiding my shame and not facing it head on, it's that it's a very isolating thing. Like I said, you don't want people to know that, oh, you know, Jane is capable of that. So you end up covering up the things that you regret because you're embarrassed and you're humiliated. But then it affects your relationship with yourself, because then you have a lack of confidence, or even a lack of self-respect, because you are not facing or dealing with things that maybe give you self-doubt, and I'll get into that later. But more than anything, you also end up affecting your relationship with others, how you treat others, and also your relationship with God, because it creates a falsehood in your mind. What shame does, it isolates us, right? It isolates us because you are proud. Like I said, you don't want people to say, oh, so Jane was capable of that, or Jane did that in her past, you know, or, you know, you don't want people to see you in that light. So it just leads up to cover up and hiding, and it's really not a good thing, because when you cover up and hide and you don't deal with the fact that, okay, you made those mistakes, what happens is that falsehood that I say that you start to develop in your mind, it starts to bring on things like, you know, you feel inadequate, you feel unworthy, you start to criticize yourself, and you doubt yourself in every walk of life, and it's just not productive. You know, we often put on a happy face in front of people, and the truth is, inside we are struggling. You know, people say things like fake it till you make it, but the truth is, when you fake it, you're not gonna make it, because you're not dealing with the issue deep down. You know, you can look good on the outside, but then what good does that do? You look good in social settings, we put on makeup, we smile, we take pictures for Instagram, but the truth is deep down we are still struggling with those personal things that we don't want anyone else to know. The thing about it, we think that, okay, I'm gonna hide it. No one really knows that I did that and I'm still carrying the pain, or no one knows that I'm carrying shame because someone did that to me. But the truth is, it starts to show. The symptoms start to show whether or not you realize it. It comes in a sense of doubt. It comes in a way of anxiety, fear. You're just always worried or anxious about situations because you don't feel good enough or you don't feel adequate enough. I personally thought that when I didn't deal with my shame, I started let it lead to negative negative cycles. Like I would repeat cycles because I wasn't really dealing with the root of the shame. Let me make examples. We become very defensive and self-protective because of the things that have been done to us. And so because we carry shame because we've been hurt, so because you feel like, oh, I was so dumb, why did I stay in that situation that long, or why did I let these people treat me that way? And even if it's not in your control, that shame you're carrying, what does it do? You become so defensive that even when people are asking you simple questions, or people are just trying to just get closer to you, you are very, you're on guard all the time. Or sometimes it even leads to reckless behavior because now we develop this thing of, oh, I've been hurt, so I might as well also hurt other people. And it's just not productive. And other thing that it can lead to as well is we become self-reliant, or we blame ourselves, and then we can't be vulnerable with others because of what has happened or what we let happen. Now we have that mentality of, I don't need anyone, I'll do whatever I need to do by myself. People always disappoint, but that's just a root. It's coming from a root of shame if you really think about it. Also, self-pity and self-criticism, things that have happened to you that haven't been in your control. Like for example, like I mentioned in my first video, I've had health scares. So that self-pity of, am I really adequate enough to go out on a limb and do that? But no, I've failed before, because I didn't get that job before, so maybe I shouldn't apply. All those types of things. We become self-conscious because it affects our self-esteem as well. And now you start thinking, what do people see this? What will people think if I say this, or what will people say if I do this? Maybe they'll judge me, because we haven't dealt with that root cause. So everything we do now, we have to overthink. And even if you're not really overthinking, or you think you're being proactive by building up this wall, the truth is it's not really proactive. It just becomes self-harming. And the other thing that I really want to talk about is self-gratification, right? Sometimes we try to cover our shame by abusing other things. How many times do you see people using alcohol as a means to push down whatever shame they're carrying, whether it's abuse, whether it's the lack of accomplishment, when people haven't reached a certain place where they are in their lives, so now they use alcohol to push it down. There are so many things. Or sometimes we even use people. We use relationship, romantic relationship, friendships, family. We use people just to fulfill that void, or to kind of mask the shame so that we don't feel bad in that moment. But you know what? It's just a temporary. It's not for the long haul. In fact, I believe that when we use certain behavior and defenses to hide our shame, or to cover up our shame, or to deal with the real root cause of our issues, I feel that it makes it harder to come out of it, because now you're putting shame upon shame upon shame, right? If you already feel bad about, let me say, maybe, let me just use a practical example. Maybe if you feel bad about relationships, like romantic relationships, how is it going to help to continue being in toxic relationships if you continue using people to fill that void, just so that you can feel validated, or to feel, okay in that time? In fact, you're going to lose yourself more and more. Or, it's one of those things. We have to find a deeper way of dealing with things, and not just on a surface level. But that's just a really simple example, and I'm gonna go in personal ones shortly. But yeah, but also I want to cover the fact that I'm not saying that we shouldn't feel bad. In fact, I was reading the other day about a concept called healthy guilt, right? It's about the capacity to feel bad when you have wronged others. So there's a difference with shame, because shame is how we then identify ourselves, But when you have healthy guilt, it's you having that conviction to say, you know what, I did something wrong and I want to fix it because I want to be a better person, and because I hurt that person, I want to make things right. That's the difference. So there is a good thing, and I feel like guilt kind of is a moral compass for us to recognize when we are doing wrong things and bring us back to say, Jane, you need to fix that. It's not right, when it's rational, coming from a rational place, not just from fears that we sometimes imagine because of already what our shame or our past mistakes have brought us into. But if it's a rational thing, then it use that guilt to fix a situation. The thing with shame, there's a difference with that rational guilt, that healthy guilt, and just shame on its own, because shame negatively affects our self-image and our confidence. We think like, oh, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I shouldn't have done that, why was I that, and why I'm not good enough, I shouldn't have, we really put ourselves, it's such a demeaning thing, and that's why I'm saying it's something that we try and cover and hide, because it's not something you want people to see, that you have that shortcoming, if you really think about it. When you hold on to it, you really begin to identify with those lies. You really do. I'm speaking from experience. When you hold on to that shame, you really think that it's part of you, and you begin to identify, instead of looking at it as an isolated incident, we start to think it's part of who we are. Let me make an example, or let me tell you guys what happened to me and how I recognized that it was affecting me in one of many ways. To be honest, this YouTube channel, this platform was put on my heart last year, 2019. I think maybe October, November, but I struggled so much, and I was like, I have this idea where I want people to have a platform where we communicate freely and we can talk about real issues and so on. But then I would have this idea, be excited, jot it down, and be like, yes, this and that. And then later on, I would be overwhelmed by the shame again, because I never dealt with those things that were holding me back. So I would tell myself like, oh, Jane, how do you want to come talk about faith if you were the same one struggling with faith a few months ago? Or how do you want to come talk about relationships if you've had failed relationships in the past? Or how do you want to talk about, just so many other issues, or and then you become self-conscious. Maybe people will think this because I was the same one doing that and that just a year ago, but we don't give ourselves that grace to grow and improve. We always hold ourselves back, and that's why I'm saying it can really keep you stuck. It can really, really keep you stuck. In fact, carrying shame impacts so many parts of our lives, and I want to ask you, how has the weight of shame impacted these things for you? For me, it's something that I didn't even realize, and that's why I wanted to talk about it with you guys. How has carrying shame impacted your faith, if you think about it? For me, I grew up in church, I grew up in a Christian family, all these things, but because I've made mistakes along the way, and I've fallen back and I've fallen off, and I've just done so many things I'm not proud of, what happens is, we all have that conviction where we're like, what, I'm changing my life and I'm gonna do better, I'm tired of this cycle of being negative, and all that type of stuff. So what would happen with me is I would be okay, 5 months straight, going to church, listening to praise and worship, being positive, encouraging others. And then on the 5th month, maybe something will provoke me, maybe someone will say something, or a situation that didn't go my way would, discourage me. Then there I go again. I'm back in that shame, in that identity of shame, where I now feel unworthy, I feel inadequate. And then all of a sudden my Bible becomes heavy to pick up because I'm not willing to face it, Or I can't even pray because I'm ashamed. Who am I to talk to God if I've sinned or I've made so many mistakes? It's really something, guys, if you really dig deep and really face yourself, because I had to do that. It's something that we really have to deal with. Again, how has shame impacted things like mental health? How many times will you be okay and then all of a sudden you're depressed, or all of a sudden you're having anxiety issues? It's because we don't deal with it from the root. When you don't deal with things properly, they'll always come back. Even it has also impacted things like my sleep. How many times do we stay up at night because you're like, nah, man, life is not fair. I should have been here by now, and I'm ashamed. By this age I thought I would have been here and I'm not here. Or why did I stay in that situation, or why did I do that? How many times have we stayed awake at night, right? Because of shame that we don't even really talk about with other people. Or then our relationships. I was watching an old clip by Pastor Heather Lindsay the other day, and she was talking about how she had been in so many toxic relationships before she got married. So when she met her husband, because she didn't deal with those prior issues, she brought all those issues into the marriage. The poor guy didn't do anything to her, but because she carried shame of being mistreated, of being abused, of being cheated on, or of being, all these other things, so now she would bring that into her marriage, and that affects your relationships in that way, because now maybe this is a good relationship, but because you haven't dealt with the shame you carry, because that happened to you, you're inadequate. Or are you really worthy of this love that you found now? Or are you really worthy of this relationship? So now you're doubting this person who hasn't even done anything to you. And she was just talking about how it's important for us to deal with the things of our past so that we don't bring them into our present. So we can't let our past circumstances contaminate our minds. Remember, in my first video, I was talking about how our thoughts shape our minds. So we have to be careful not to let whatever happens contaminate our minds to the point that we start to identify with that. And just because we've made mistakes or things have happened to us, now we think that that's our identity. You see why I'm saying that it's important for us to deal with things from the root cause, right? Because you can be okay for some time. You think you're doing okay and you're on track, but then anything that triggers or provokes that issue we haven't dealt with can make us fall off the track again. That's why we have to deal with things and pull the weed out of the root so that it doesn't get the opportunity to grow back out. We have to really work with those things that we are ashamed to work with. And what helped me is I really sat down with myself and I was like, but Jane, why is it so hard to let go of things, And then I realized that, it's so easy for us to forgive other people and to be like, what, maybe they were going through this and maybe that situation. We are so quick to, understand other people and be kind to other people. But why is it that for ourselves it's so hard? We struggle. I struggled so much with forgiving myself and giving myself the benefit of the doubt, and saying, what, Jane, maybe you didn't know better. Maybe you didn't have the resources back then, or maybe you were too young to understand or to see the full picture. We need to be kinder to ourselves and realize that we all make mistakes and no one is perfect. We have to look at ourselves with compassion and to have grace for ourselves the way we would for other people. We don't do that, and I think that's why it's so hard for us to let go and to look at ourselves in a different light, because I know we have such high expectations of ourselves. And I'm speaking for myself. I have such high expectations of myself, so when I make mistakes or when I fall off, I never understand, like, really, Jane, again, or oh, but Jane, really, I think you knew better. Why did you put yourself in that position? Or why did you? But then we can't control everything. We can only learn and move forward. We really can't. And I urge you guys today, for the first, I think as the first step, really sit down with yourself and ask yourself, what are you holding on to from your past, and really be compassionate. If it was your friend, your sister, boyfriend, husband, or anyone else who's close to you that you are struggling with, or that that is struggling with a situation, what would you tell them? Wouldn't you be like, don't be so hard on yourself, you know, you made a mistake? You would do that. So why not do that for ourselves more often? I think we really need to look at that and try and be kinder and more understanding to ourselves. We need to dig deep and go into those uncharted waters, really, like, seriously, and deal with that root cause. Face those things that we don't want to face head on. When we don't face the situation, what happens is we live a life of brokenness, a broken cycle. And we, you know, when something is broken and you try to patch it up, you know, you put super glue, then you put this, and then you put this. The point is the scar is still there, because you're treating the symptoms, but you're not treating the root cause, you know. And when you treat something by this, like, if you don't treat it from the root, it's gonna keep happening and it's gonna keep coming up, you know, coming to the surface. So we have to break those cycles and face the things we don't want to face, because I don't think anyone wants to live a life of bitterness, of hurt, you know, because when you live a life of resentment, hurt, bitterness, and just all of that heavy stuff, it really holds you back and it keeps you stuck. And even if you think that you've moved on and you've done better, it probably is manifesting in a different way, to be honest. And I'm speaking to myself as well. It's something very serious. So here is where it comes, right? I realized that what I was doing was not working. You know, I was like, okay, look at me now at this age where I am, and I'm still holding on to trauma from childhood, trauma from things of 5 years ago, trauma of things that happened here and there, you know. So I had to be honest with myself and realize that the tactics weren't working for me. My tactic wasn't working for me. It wasn't productive, you know. And we can read self-help books, we can do affirmations, we can read positive quotes and read motivational or watch motivational talks and all of that. If it works for you, like, in the long haul, good for you. I did that, it didn't work. It would work for now, and I'll be pumped, I'll be like, yes, positive. If you speak positively, you manifest positivity, and if you do this, and it would work for that time. But to be honest, there's always a crack somewhere when we don't deal with things properly. It doesn't last so long. And you know, one thing also about shame, if it keeps replaying, you can be happy and you can be okay. But if at the back of your mind you still have those issues that come out of nowhere when you're by yourself, it means that there's still an issue that you really need to work on, especially if it comes with shame and guilt and all those types of things. So, you know, Jane's Corner is foremost, more than anything, is about faith. So I'm going to go to the word, because to be honest, I didn't do this by myself. Like I said, my own tactics weren't working. I tried and it just wasn't working. And I know it's easier said than done, because when people say, no, just pray, just be strong, you know, just do this, just do this. I've heard that so many times, and I've also told people that so many times. But to be honest, it's more than that. It's really about dealing with yourself. It's really about that. And we have to look at faith in a very realistic way. I feel like sometimes when we look at the Bible and we look at faith, we look at it from a very like, oh, that's just a story. That doesn't apply to me now. Christianity isn't ignorant to the pain and the suffering in the world. I think sometimes people misunderstand when people say, have faith. No, just believe. And it doesn't mean that when you have faith, you don't feel pain. It doesn't mean that when you have faith, you're ignorant or you're ignoring what's going on or the bad things that are happening. That's not what it means. I think it's understanding that all these things will happen, but there's a way forward, there's a productive way forward. In fact, the Bible has so many examples of great people that had challenges and that went through trials and had seasons of worry. I mean, look at Moses, look at David. Even Jesus had his fair share of challenges and judgment, you know, and that's just what I'm trying to say. I think when we can really look at faith in a very practical way, in a way that it applies, because it does apply to us. The word is a living thing. It's not something that's just distant. It's not just a history thing. It's something we can apply today. So for me, the first step that helped me was truly believing God loves me. And I know it sounds so mundane, like, yeah, obviously, Jane, God loves you, God loves all of us. But the truth is, do we truly believe it? Because when you understand and you truly believe it, what does that look like? It means that you find your identity in God and not in other people. It means that you understand that God loves you regardless. There's not amount of good or bad that you can do for God to love you any less. That's what it means when you truly believe. The Bible talks about we've all sinned and fallen short of God's glory, meaning that God knows that we are not perfect, and He knows that we will fall off, and He knows that, we make mistakes, but He still loves us. His grace is still sufficient. And that's such an important thing to keep in mind. And I was trying to fix myself. And I was like, no, if I stop doing this and this first, then I'll go to church. But no, we have to go as we are. We can't achieve or attain perfectionism, because it's not attainable. You can't fix yourself because you're a person. It doesn't work like that. I had to also realize that I couldn't fill those voids and heal myself and put substitutes in places that only God could fill. That's the first thing. Okay, the truth is that there'll always be distractions, always. That's why I said the Christianity is not oblivious to the fact that there'll be challenges. There'll always be distractions. There'll always be people or situations that remind us of our past mistakes. And I think that's the problem when we don't deal with our issues head on, or when we don't try and solve and become better from our problems. It would be easy for someone else to come in and say, oh, Jane, you who was doing this and this just last year, now you're here talking about, you understand what I mean? And it would be easy for you to believe that because you're still living in that shame and what that shame brings to you, which is self-doubt, inadequacy, and you feel unworthy, and now you believe any falsehood that is said about you. That falsehood that we put in our minds, it's not the truth. It's just that we are holding on to that, and it's not good. The Bible also talks about breaking off things that distract us. Breaking off things that hold us in those situations, Let's remove things that can tempt us into going back to the same places that we were. So we have to be honest. If we're still putting ourselves in situations or around people that keep us in those places of shame, right? You can't say you want to do better, but then you're still staying in the situation that's holding you back. There's a saying by Albert Einstein that says insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. If you want to change and you want to see differences or growth in your life, then you have, unfortunately, I had to separate myself maybe from people that I felt like, okay, you know what, when I stay around these people, it makes me continue this destructive cycle. Or maybe this situation, maybe when I put myself in these situations, or what I feed my mind, it puts me in those situations as well. Let's not add on to the shame, because I said, the more we add on, the more we put ourselves in situations, it will be harder for us to get out of it. So anything that's holding you back, that that is adding on to your shame, or it's something that you're not necessarily proud of, or it's not something you see yourself elevating with, then maybe it's something we need to really work on. And that's what I had to do. I really had to face those things. We can't change if we choose to remain in the situations that keep us stuck. We can't change if we still choose to stay in situations that bring more shame, or situations that add on to shame, or situations also that restrict us or avoid us from dealing with the situations. And that's where we come with substitutes and using situations and people and other types of behaviors to cover up our shame, our void, and so on. Like I said before, you can't fix yourself, right? You really can't. For me, I speak about faith because it's the only thing that really helped me. And the funny thing is, I always thought of myself as a person who was faithful. I believed in God and everything, but there's really, I noticed a difference between religion. There's a difference between just going to church on Sunday and truly having a one-on-one relationship with God. There's a difference, and when you truly understand that God is a loving Father and He wants to help you, then you'll be able to understand that you can cast your worries and your anxiety on Him, because He cares. He's a loving Father. And the reason why I'm saying it's a big thing is because you realize that you're casting your worry onto your creator, not looking for solutions in people. People always disappoint us. Situations change, seasons change. But when we cast our fears and our anxiety onto God and truly seek that true healing and validation, we're able to have a peace. Not to say we don't have problems, but you're able to have peace because you know that you're in good hands. I just want to say that you're not defined by your past mistakes. For so long, for the majority of my part, I felt like I was defined by my past mistakes. It affected my confidence. It affected how I spoke to people. It affected how I saw myself. And it's something that I wouldn't even want to speak about openly because I was just so ashamed of things that I did. Or, sometimes we even make things bigger than they are because we are hiding. And when you're talking to yourself and you have those conversations in your mind, sometimes we make things worse than they actually are. And that's why I'm saying the battle of shame is such an isolating thing. We need to be able to talk or to seek counsel from each other. And that's why I really wanted to talk about this today. I'm sure there are so many of you out there that feel like, oh, Neyman, why am I doing this? And why do I keep repeating these cycles? If I'm talking to you, then hopefully you can get what I'm trying to say, because I was you once upon a time. Actually, I'm still that person. It's not a one-day thing. It's a constant reconciliation, understanding that your value doesn't come from those places. You don't let your past dictate or identify who you are today if you choose to do the work and try and move forward in a productive manner. Let us find value in God. The word says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And that is such a beautiful thing to know that God just put thought in making you. You are beautiful. And so I don't see why we need to go on and carrying this heavy burden of shame. God knows we make mistakes, but at the end of the day, God's mercies are renewed every morning. God doesn't keep record of the things we've done wrong. His grace is sufficient for us. Not just me, His grace is sufficient for you too. And I think we need to understand that we feel like we've gone too far off. We need to neglect that prodigal spirit. I think we all know the story of the prodigal son who went too far off, and he just went too far, and he did, he went away from home and he did all these things. I was that person who felt like, no, this time I'm just too far off, I feel lost, I feel empty, I've made so many mistakes, how can I face myself again, or how can I face God again? But the truth is, you remember in the story, the father still welcomed him home, and that's the type of father we serve. That's the God we serve, that He'll still welcome us back home. And so I think we need to remember those things, but in the same light, also not taking advantage of grace and not abusing grace. And just because God is a forgiving Father and He loves us, it doesn't mean we should take it for granted. And the only way we can not take it for granted is by doing the work and really surrendering ourselves and reconciling ourselves and understanding that, I have to face these demons that I'm afraid to face within myself, these issues that I'm ashamed of, that are dirty and I don't want people to know. I need to face them for me to truly make sure that I don't keep making the same mistakes and falling off and falling into the same cycles over and over again. That's the only way to gain true freedom. And in that true freedom, it's not saying that your life will be perfect. It's not saying that you won't have obstacles. It's not saying that you won't be reminded of your past. God knows I still get reminded of my past, and it still holds me back sometimes. But then I have to pick myself back up again, because I have to believe what God says about me and not what my past says about me, and not what my mistakes say about me or what people might say about me, because we are all on our journey. And I just want all of us to have that freedom and find that peace and joy, so that we can have fulfilled lives. So yeah, that's the end of my conversation today. I hope that you guys could relate. Please leave your comments down below. I'd really love to hear what you guys have to say on this topic. We carry shame in such a big, broad way, different, an array of ways, just so many ways, things that I can't touch on, I can't talk about everything in this short amount of time. But yeah, please comment down below if you guys feel like there's something that you're dealing with that's really serious and you don't want to talk about it in the comments down below. I'll leave my email address down there so that we can talk about it and just get into detail about those situations, and hopefully I can pray for you guys and so on. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. And yeah, thank you. I'll see you guys on my next upload. Until then, stay blessed, guys.